Hello and welcome to episode 1. I'm your host, Jordan, and in this podcast, I help you fight binge-watching boredom by watching the pilot episode of TV shows on your favorite streaming networks, and help you save time and answer the question, should I binge that? On today's episode, I'll be discussing Futureman, and you'll find out if it is a winner or a loser. Now, Futureman is a Hulu original, which, if I'm not wrong, is the first Hulu original that I will be reviewing in my podcast. All the rest of them have been Netflix originals. I just decided to do something different this time, mix it up, go to Hulu, and Futureman just kind of jumped out at me. I thought it looked kind of good. The audience that Futureman is for is a mature adult audience. There's explicit language used, there's a lot of sexual content, and there's a lot of violence as well. And it is a comedy. It's not meant to be taken seriously. The show is definitely for adults, and they definitely aim for that audience, and they made it for that audience. This first episode, the beginning of the first episode, we're introduced to this kind of a desolate looking world with this family group running away from something. Don't know what it is. They're running away, and then we end up seeing what they're running away from. It's these they look like they're uniformed, kind of military type personnel, but there's something different about them. They kind of seem almost robotic, and they start assaulting the family. And just before the family group is going to get shot by one of them, the soldier guy gets shot by Futureman, played by Josh Hutcherson. And Futureman spouts some cheesy action movie one-liners, and then he wakes up. Turns out that the main character, Josh Hutcherson, whose character name in the show is Josh, not Futureman. He just called himself Futureman in his dream, and his dad's waking him up because his dad's had made him breakfast. So he goes and he's eating breakfast and finds out that his joystick's broken, so he has to go to the store to get a new joystick, and the store gives him crap for playing this game that everybody else has already given up on because it's unbeatable, and he's still playing it, and he's telling him, well, I played this game because it's unbeatable. The game is called Biotic Wars, and he's the only one who's still playing it in the whole world, and because it's unbeatable, and everyone's moved on to better things. And then we find out that Josh, the main character, works at a lab for treating sexually transmitted diseases, and he works as a janitor at the lab, and apparently not a very good janitor because he's called out a couple times about his crappy work, but while he works, he also, on his break time, he goes into his janitor closet and he has a whole computer set up where he plays Biotic Wars, and he always dies on level 83. In this Biotic Wars game, it looks like a video game that you would have, like an on-rails shooter, like at an arcade where you're going to pop in the corner and you hold the fake gun and you're shooting at the screen. That's what the game looks like. But he plays it with a keyboard. I think it was a keyboard. I thought I saw a mouse and a joystick. So I'm not quite sure how that works. But he's playing this game, and he dies on level 83 every time, even though he has all of these weapons, more weapons than he's ever had in the game. He still dies in level 83. And he goes back to go do some more janitor work, and one of the scientists in the lab is calling him out on how bad of a job he does, and then he's getting yelled at by a scientist who is telling him that he had to swipe urethras, and then he had to wipe so many urethras to try to get enough samples for the testing of these STDs, and then the scientist who was carrying them ended up slipping on a wet floor that the janitor, Josh, had just mopped. So he was yelling at him, and while he was yelling at him, then the director of the lab stands up and is like, all right, you can't yell at him. You shouldn't be yelling at people, blah, blah, blah. And then the director starts telling Josh that he started this lab because he got herpes back in 1969 during the moon landing watch party in California at Caltech. That's when he got the herpes on his lip. He has a cold sore. And this is why he started the lab, is to try to cure herpes. And then he also quotes Einstein saying insanity is doing the same thing over and over again and expecting the same results. So then Josh is back playing the video game again, and he gets to that level, and he's like, all right, level 83, I can do this, I'm going to beat it this time. And he thinks, well, you know what? Insanity is doing the same thing over and over again, expecting the same results. So he unequips all of his weapons in the game and just goes in, no weapons, and he beats the level. He runs out of the building, kills the big bad scientist, runs out of the building blows up, the game's over. He goes run out to tell his parents, because he still lives at home. He goes out to tell his parents are gone. So his parents are home, and then Josh goes back into his room, and he's, sitting there thinking about a video game character. And as he's thinking about this specific video game character, they both kind of appear in his room. Two of the main characters from the video game. And he thinks that they're playing a joke on him, and he thinks it's the guys from the video game store, and he's like, whatever, you're not from the game. And they're like, you're the only one who's beat this game, you are the one, we come from the future, you're the one who's going to save us, and all this stuff, blah, 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 blah. And he's like, no, this is all movie plots, like, I'm not an idiot, these are all different plots of movies, I know I'm not, I know I'm being punked. And they pull out this time travel device, and they go back to 1969. They make some crude jokes about 1969. They go back in time, and they they end up getting clothes from some bikers, and the male from the video game, whose name is Wolf, it's Wolf and Tiger that came back from the video game, who are actually from the future. Wolf discovers pickles, and he loves pickles because all they eat in the future is rats. And they tell him, hey, we were expecting you to be some great hero, and he's not good at fighting, he's never been in a fight before. And they're confused because in the future video games are for training soldiers, but nowadays they're just for fun and for recreation. And he explains that to them, and then they tell him what their mission is. And it turns out their mission is to stop the head of that laboratory from curing herpes, because it turns out he cures herpes and creates a big race of biotic humans that end up murdering everybody and taking over the world. And they're back in 1969 because that's where it all began. They didn't know why that's where it all began. They just knew that that's where they needed to go. And Josh happens to know that that's when the doctor had, Dr. Elias, had contracted herpes and was sent on his mission to discover the cure for herpes. And then the end of the episode is them welcoming him to the Resistance and heading out to Caltech to go and stop Elias from ever getting herpes. Now, for the concept of the show, I mean, they made references to several different movies and TV shows that have similar plot elements, so I wouldn't say it's original. Maybe the take on it had more originality, but it's the same kind of a concept where this nobody who does this one special thing, everybody thinks he's special, and really he's not, but, in the end, he really is special. He was just special in a different way. That's where this seems like it's going. But I thought that the characters were fun, and you wanted to know more about them. And I thought that the casting was well done, with Josh Hutcherson in that lead role. I don't know who the two characters were, the two actors who played the video game characters were. I didn't recognize them from anything, but I felt that they were well cast as their soldier resistance kind of. I grew up in a terrible future kind of characters. They played that very well. And for my predictions as to where the show's going, I see it just kind of being one of those typical tales where Josh is going to end up being the chosen one somehow. He's going to end up saving the day somehow as the chosen one. But the journey is more important than the destination, and I think it will be full of a lot of different spins and failures and humor. That'll make the journey fun, but I just think the destination is exactly what everybody's expecting, that he's going to be somehow the chosen one, and he's going to be Futureman, just like in his fantasies. Maybe not exactly like in his fantasies, but he will be a version of Futureman and a chosen one. But now it is time to reveal my thoughts on if it is a winner or a loser. Just after this quick break. Alright, now we're back, and as promised, it is time to reveal if this is a winner or if it's a loser. It's a winner. Yes, I really enjoyed the humor in it. Again, it's more adult-oriented, so I wouldn't watch it when your kids are awake, maybe after they go to bed or during their nap. But it was definitely a funny show, funny enough to keep me interested in where the plot's going. And I did like the characters. I did kind of want to see how the soldier types were going to grow into, how Josh was going to help the soldier types grow and less soldiery, and then how Josh was going to grow and be a better, because he's kind of a down on his luck kind of a guy where he's a janitor, he's not going anywhere, he still lives with his parents, so it'll be interesting to see how he evolves. And again, the humor was a huge draw with it. I thought it was very funny, and this is definitely going to be something on my watch list. But thank you all so much for listening. Please make sure to subscribe and like the episode. And I hope you guys check out Futureman. Let me know. You can find me on Twitter at episode1pod. That's WON1. Please follow me there. Tweet out new episodes when they appear. You can find our podcast. You can find the podcast on Podbean, Google Play, iTunes, really wherever you get your podcasts. Just search for episode 1. And good night, good morning, good evening. Thank you for listening.